carry on with the story. Oh, we can have a little song to start off with. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, sure.
Or can do, yeah. Or Krishna one, maybe. Yeah. So we join the story again, just where Beeshma has taken his great vow. And just show I haven't taken a great vow yet. Got the Dutch cheese here and the wonderful chocolate. Here we go, look at that. Chocolate. Sing that. I'm not going to be too long now because I know we've all got apple cake waiting and wonderful meals. So, but just in any good book, it's always good to look ahead a little bit. You I always do that when I'm reading a book. I always cheat a little bit, even though it's just you reading it. And just look ahead. Why, this story? Because the climax is when this basically ends up. Don't want to spoil it too much. But we got two rival cousins, really. So we know what families can be like, when there's inheritance involved, isn't it? Even if it's just a small amount. It's surprising, people you think you've known for years suddenly can get a bit funny when there's money and all sorts involved. So here, it's not just that, there's a whole kingdom at stake, which is the whole of the earth, like be the whole of the European Union, who's going to be president of the EU, sort of thing. So, at the climax, who are there? We have, in the Gita, if you look at the Gita, it starts off with King Dhritarashtra says, Sanjaya, who is that king? What happened to our families there? Who was Sanjaya? The Pandavas were there. King Duryodhana. So all these characters we're now going to introduce. It says in verse 8, people like yourself, Beeshma we just talked about, Karna, we're going to talk about, and all the Pandavas. So we just want to introduce this great story. So what happens next? Beeshma takes the great vow. I renounce everything. So he carries on, and then Santanu, his father, marries Satyavati. And they're very, very happy. So he's very contented that he has this wonderful life now. He's got Satyavati, who's very beautiful, very kind, and he's just so happy, and they're doing all nice things, going out on little trips, and Beeshma has to take on the role of being king, but not actually be king. And he spends his whole life really doing that. He never actually becomes king. Although he's renounced it, he always ends up running the whole show really, without getting any of the credit. So his father goes off, and they do have two sons. Satyavati and Santanu have two sons. You can look. I won't give you the names because it gets quite complicated if we give you too many Indian names. I can't remember them, so.
Oh, I know.
No, I've got it written down somewhere. Got the whole family tree here. So it's wonderful. So really, again, the whole story could end here now. This next generation, it could end here because there's two sons being born to Santanu. Beeshma's agreed they can be kings. There's no problem. They could be king. The whole story could end there, but it doesn't. It's just beginning. The whole story is just beginning. It just takes twists and turns that you wouldn't believe. So the first son, unfortunately, gets killed in a battle. So there's one son left. The second son of Satyavati. Santanu has a wonderful old age and dies a happy man. He goes back to heaven with Ganga again. And now he knows to be careful what happens when the wind blows the sari off. He's a bit more wiser now. He's done his time. He's done his time on earth. And he's back. He said, I did my time. And I've done my punishment. Now I want to be treated normally in heaven. So he's back in heaven. So it's Beeshma, Satyavati, because she's a lot younger, so she's still there. Widowed, she's there. And the one son. Unfortunately, the one son that's left isn't a very strong son. He's not very, Beeshma was really powerful man, son of a god. But this son's not quite that healthy. He's always got a cold and sniffles, and he's not like a king in those days needs to rule the kingdom, be the strongest, lead the army. So he's not really like that. He's more creative. He's more music, and he's more into flowers, and it's a bit more of a creative type, really. So he's not really one for leading great armies and defending the kingdom and upholding righteousness. So anyway, basically, Beeshma has to carry on running the kingdom. Well, those renounced it, but here he is, he's still running it. still running everything, still protecting. Someone has to protect the great kingdom, and it still comes to him. So anyway, Satyavati is getting worried. She's saying, look, we need to continue the royal line. So basically, normally in those days, the great kings would almost impress their brides in a great tournament with their skill and bravery, but he wasn't really going to be able to do that. Maybe on a video game, computer game, maybe something like that. But not when it comes to archery, the great warrior skills. Darts, maybe just about get away with that. Horse riding, all these great skills. And I'm going to break my promise now, which I wasn't going to go off on a tangent, so I'm going to make it a slight tangent, because the same happened to the Buddha. Siddhartha. He wasn't called Siddhartha. Siddhartha's like a Sanskrit name, and he became the Buddha. But he had two parts to his life. One part, he was born a prince. And the king gets the astrologers in, and the astrologers say there's two things that can happen. One is he'll be a great king that'll look after the whole kingdom, or he'll become an enlightened being. Now his father, most of us would think, well, as in Drew, would think, yes, become enlightened. That's the whole goal, why we're here. Why else are we here? Everything else is illusion. But no, the father said, no, I need a great king. So they create this world palace, because he knows it's suffering that takes you to spirituality. It's very rare people come to serious spirituality sort of their own free will. Normally something happens. It's almost I can see in my own life, up to about 17, 18, you just have a life enjoying yourself and doing all sorts of things and getting into trouble and everything. And then the universe says, right, enough's enough. Now we do something where you're not going to be so happy anymore. And then you look for the answers. So the king knows this, so he says, what we have to do with Siddhartha is protect him, insulate him from anything that's not very nice. So he has this wonderful palace with gardens, and everything's beautiful, and there's no person who's sick or ill or unhappy. Everyone's very nice. He's in this beautiful environment, and he's very, very happy, and he grows up to a young man. But again, his father doesn't teach him to be really tough, because he's in this totally protected environment. And then one day when he's a young man, beautiful young man, the wonderful Yashoda, Princess Yashoda comes. Gorgeous, beautiful girl, and he falls totally in love with her. So the father says, right, we'll arrange for your marriage to Yashoda. So she goes to Yashoda's father, and he says, well, I'm not sure, Siddhartha is a lovely boy. I couldn't ask for a nicer boy. But is he really strong enough to be a king? So the father says, yes. He says, yeah, so it's okay then, we'll have this big tournament, big contest. And Siddhartha's father is really worried about it, because he thinks, well, he's had really sheltered, really given him a nice life. He's not really. But actually, it was a lot better than they thought. He's good at the archery and everything like that. And then the final test was to ride this horse. And they got this horse somewhere, and it was a very powerful horse, like a horse bigger and stronger than you've ever seen. And this horse was full of energy. It took about 10 men to hold this horse in one place. When it breathed for its long nostrils, it was it snorted. And anyway, the thing was, you had to get on this horse and ride it like they're doing the rodeos sort of thing. But because this animal was like nothing you've ever seen. It's like a monster. So anyway, some of the other princes try it, and they nearly get killed, really, trying to get on this horse. And they're just about to say, look, this is too difficult. Someone's going to get badly hurt. We're going to stop the whole contest. But Siddhartha says, no, I want to, because I really want to marry Yashoda. So I will do this, take this challenge. So he walks up to the horse, and then he just whispers in its ear, like he's a horse whisperer. He's like with carrots and, grass, things like that. And he just strokes the horse, and he just loves the horse. And then the horse just calms down and lets him. And he becomes the horse he rides for the race. He becomes a prince then for a long time, until it's about 30 or something. And his horse. So it just shows that sometimes, gentleness can be more persuasive than force. So we have the same situation here with Satyavati's son. So Satyavati says to Beeshma, because Beeshma was the greatest of warriors, he was the opposite. So he's like stepbrother, he's like the least, well, not quite, it's not like him, because he's totally healthy and strong. And he says, you must go and there is a tournament coming up where there's 3 beautiful princesses. And there's Amba, and there's a bit of a series, Ambika, and Ambalika. So obviously when they're choosing their names, they are stuck on the first page of the names. Yeah. So they never know who they're going to be calling. They go, and then you wouldn't know which one it is. And even they still don't know. When it's Umbi, then Amba would know it's not her, but it could be one of the other 2. So there's 3 princesses there. Beeshma goes direct to the kingdom. This is a business, he means business. He goes straight in there and he performs feats that no one else can perform with archery and whatever. So it's the undisputed choice, suitable to have these princesses as brides. So it's all within moments he takes them back in his chariot, back to the kingdom. But the eldest of the 3 princesses is really sad and crying. And he says to Amba, he says, why are you so sad? Why are you so sad, Amba? He said, this is a really nice kingdom. He says, no, I was totally in love with another prince. I just wanted to be with another prince. So Beeshma says, that's fine, 2 is fine. You can, if you want to, you're free. So he gives her freedom to go back to this other prince that they're so in love with each other. And had this arrangement that she was going to choose him and he was going to choose her, and there's going to be this wonderful romance. They're planning their life together and what house they'd like to live by the sea, and go for little walks and planning what children they would have and everything. They planned this whole life together, just sitting in this little garden that we sat there, just in the evenings with the star, the moon out. But anyway, so she goes back to her beloved, but he's so humiliated. He's so humiliated. He's been defeated by Beeshma, and he says, I can't. Say it's too late. I can't do it now. So she's left. So she says, I must go back. So she goes back to Hastinapur. Now the original prince she's supposed to be with, he says, well, I don't want you now. You were in love with someone else. So she really gets rejected. And they say in English, in England, well, and in Wales, in UK, there's no fury like a woman who's put to one side like that. There's no fury like it. So she becomes furious. So she says, Beeshma, this is all your fault. So this is all your fault. So you must do the decent thing now. My beloved won't marry me. Your brother won't marry me. So you must take responsibility. You must marry me. He says, I can't. Because I've taken the great vow. I can't marry you. So poor Amba is not rejected just once, 2 or 3 times. Then he said, look, the best thing to do is just try again. Go back to the other prince, see if he'll change his mind. It's very humiliating for her. Just go all the way back to another kingdom, long journey. Goes all the way back in tears, and makeup's now all a mess and everything, hair's in a mess. So I think the other prince would have changed his mind if the hair hadn't have been so bad. If she had the right hair products, again, the whole story could have ended there. But no, he says no. So she goes back again. This time, she's absolutely furious. And she decides this is all Beeshma's fault. She says, Beeshma, you must marry me. You must marry me. And he says, I can't, I really can't. So she goes off, and she's going to look for someone now who's going to force someone to take up her cause, another great prince or king, to take up this righteous cause, to force Beeshma to marry her. So she goes around. She won't find anyone. They'll go, no, I'm not going to. Beeshma's so great. I'm not going to try and take him on. Until she comes to the great rishi, Parasurama. Parasurama was actually Beeshma's teacher. So he could possibly defeat Beeshma, because he actually taught Beeshma. And he listens to her story, and he says, yes, I will go and talk to him and sort him out. He's been a naughty boy. So the great Parasurama comes and says to Beeshma, you must marry this poor girl, because look at her. She's got nothing. She's lost everything. Do the decent thing. He says, no, I've taken the vow. I cannot break my vow. And he says, no, you must do it. I'm telling you, you must do it. And he says, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't know how, it goes on quite a while. He says, you must do it. He says, no, I'm not. He says, you must. You must. You must. You must do it. He goes, no, I must not do it. You must not do it. So they end up, teacher and disciple, having a great fight about it. So it goes on for a whole week. And then they send 2, what they call astras, which are like, they're not like normal weapons. They're like divine weapons. They're very, very powerful. So they both, and if one sends an astra, the other one has to send an astra to meet it, to counteract it. So one sends an astra. So Parasurama, after a week, no one can get the better of the other one. So he sends this powerful weapon. He's not really supposed to do it. He sends this powerful weapon. And Beeshma has to send the equal weapon. And then all the gods come down and says these weapons cannot meet because it will destroy the earth. So the gods come down and they have to take the weapons back. And they basically have to call it a draw. So it's a tie, 50-50. So it wasn't decisive. So Parasurama goes back to Ambe and says, look, there's no one on earth. I'm like the bester. He says, Ik ben de bester. He says, Ik ben de bester. He says, I'm the best. And I can defeat him. He says, you won't be able to get him to do it by force. He said, if I were you, just take the money, go and have a nice life somewhere, forget all about Beeshma, forget all about the whole thing. But she won't. She's so angry. She's so angry that then she decides to pray to Lord Shiva. Pray to Lord Shiva to grant your wishes. So she does all this, fasts and meditates and does yoga and does all this like austerity. And eventually Lord Shiva appears to her and he says, what is your wish? And normally when God comes to you, you're supposed to ask for something nice. Like say, maybe we could have world peace, or perhaps I could become enlightened, or, have lots of friends in Dhruv Yoga. Or the one thing you can ask for is just give me contentment. So I'm content with what life gives me. Because that's a great thing. We have so much. All of us have so much. We can list all the things we have. We have friendship, we have food, we have family. We live in a nice environment. We have so much. We have the chocolate sprinkle. All this, we have so much to be grateful for. But we're still not happy. So sometimes the great wish is for what they call it santosh. So you get a person, you can say, please give me santosh. And santosh is when you're very content with the life that you receive and the things that happen to you. Someone who has that. There's a later part of the story where there's a character called Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira has to answer all these questions. Like, say, his brothers are like put in a coma. They say, right, if we want your brothers to come back to life, you have to answer these questions. Beautiful questions they ask Yudhishthira. And he has to answer them. And it's wonderful, the answer. He says, what's the greatest, most wonderful thing in the world? He says the most wonderful thing in the world is that every day people are surrounded, they hear about death, or they hear about it, or someone dies, or they read about it in the paper, or they know someone who's died. People are surrounded by it. He says, but the most wonderful thing in the world is that everyone thinks they're going to live forever. He says that's the most surprising thing. They say, what's the most plentiful thing in the world? He says, the worries of men, the worries of people. He said, there's no end to it, the worries they have. They say, what is the greatest gift? He said, the greatest gift a person can have is contentment. Because even like Santana had a whole kingdom, but sometimes he didn't feel content. So to have contentment is the greatest thing. So Ambe's there, Shiva's then, he's hoping she's going to ask for something nice, like, may I live with true people, or learn true yoga, or something nice, or world peace flame in every town in Netherlands, or something really wonderful like that. But instead she says, no, I want you to destroy Beeshma. Sometimes people ask things that aren't. Sometimes God laughs at what people ask for. Because they ask for something that's impermanent. And really could ask for something that's permanent. So he says, well, no, don't ask for that. He says, there's all sorts of other things you can have. Gives a whole list of things you can have. Sometimes people ask me, make me immortal. That's the other thing people ask for. I want to be immortal. I want to dominate the world. And God says, I can't make you immortal because I'm not immortal. Everything, even I, come to an end. How much more so a human being comes to an end. Even I come to an end, so I can't make you immortal. But all I can make it is difficult for you to die. I can make circumstances difficult for you to die. So the first time it happens, because it all gets recorded, so everyone reads what happened. The first time it happens, it says, let no man be able to kill me like that, so I can live forever. So the first one, he has that wish. And unfortunately, his wife poisoned him with something. So that was how he ended. So he didn't live forever. So the second one learned from that. And he says, make sure I'm not killed by anything wet or dry. And somehow he was killed by a sponge, which isn't wet or dry. So anyway, Ambe's there, and she asks, she says, no, that's what I want. The destruction of Beeshma. And Beeshma's such a great man. And Shiva doesn't want to give that promise. He says, I will give you this promise, but not this lifetime. He says, I'm going to give it to you, but you can't do it because he's such a great being. I'm not going to give it to you now, but you can have it next lifetime. So it said then she enters the fire herself to hasten her birth in the next life. And she comes into the story again in her next. So it's a story that goes through different generations. Anyway, the other two princesses are there with the stepbrother, but unfortunately he dies. So now we're left in a situation where there's just the two princesses. There's Beeshma has decided he's not going to marry again. So Satyavati says to Beeshma, please just take on these two princesses now. You don't need your vow now. Your father's a long time been in heaven. There's no other solution. If you marry them now, then the whole thing will be sorted. We can finish the story here and now. It'll be over. Is the story going to end now? No. It's just begun. So Beeshma says, no, I've taken the vow. And I'm not going to change it. Nothing on earth will make me change this vow. As long as I live on earth, the only release will be at death. When I die, I'll be released from this vow. I'm firm in this vow. I'm not going to change it like that. So there must be another solution. The only other solution is you can use an enlightened being through mantra. They can create a child. And this is a great miracle. And it's one miracle that people don't believe very readily, I've noticed. Other miracles people believe quite easily, like Jesus did water into wine. People believe that. I think it's one of the favourite miracles. When he did that, he was most popular. Jesus was so popular then because they're at this wedding and they're running out of the wine. Which is, if you've been to a wedding It's quite serious if you start running out, I've noticed. My cousin got married to an Irishman. And Irish people, they really like Guinness and what have you. You know, they can really drink a lot. You know, like you calculate how much alcohol he gave. You think, right, I've got 100 people that drink maybe half a litre. So how much do we need? Irish family, no, you've got to up it, you know, a lot more. So anyway, we started running out then, so we had to get a lot more in. So same thing happens at this wedding. Jesus is there, and he turns the water into wine. And everyone's surprised, because normally you give the best wine first, and then when people have had a few glasses of wine, their mind starts going a bit funny, sort of thing. Then you give them the cheap wine, because they don't really notice, they don't really care by that stage. What, just give me the wine, I don't care what it is. You know, they can't even tell what they're drinking, who they are, what they're saying. So what they noticed, Jesus then turns the water into wine, but it's nicer, the nicest wine, the divine wine, comes now. So everyone really likes that miracle. But the miracle where someone creates a child by mantra, I've noticed people don't tend to believe it that easily for some reason. They don't, you know, even Joseph and Mary, wasn't it? She said, it's divine, you know, I'm going to have this child. It's a divine miracle. He found it difficult, Joseph found it difficult to believe. Gabriel had to come. Had to come in a dream. To come, yeah, it's really true. Really. Then he sort of believes it just. So if you imagine it's, you know, people find it hard to believe. You know, boyfriend has been away a long time, they come back and you tell them there's been this miracle and it's... Anyway, so that's the miracle. They get Vedavyas. So Vedavyas actually writes the story. So he says, I will create the children. You have to bring the princesses, just bring them in front of me, and they will give birth to sons who will be fit to be kings. He says, just bring them in front of me. So the first one comes, is Ambika comes in front of him. But he's just come out of the forest. He's like a forest ascetic who lives in the forest. So he doesn't wash, you know, it's not what she's used to. So when she sees him, she closes her eyes as he's doing the mantra. He's doing the powerful mantra. Don't worry, I'm not doing it now. I won't tell you what the mantra is. We may have a course on it at Drew, Wales sometime. Don't worry now, the mantra. Don't worry, you won't have any awkward situations. But he does, I'm not doing the mantra, he does a mantra. And it's like, irradiates anyone who's in the vicinity, this mantra. It irradiates her, so she becomes pregnant just through the mantra. But she closes her eyes like that. So what it means is, because her eyes were closed, as he uttered the mantra, the first child, Dhritarashtra, was born blind. It was just as simple as that, over in a second. And he goes, next, like that. Next one comes. Ambika, she comes. And she sees him, and she goes totally pale, just from shock. So her son is called Pandu, and Pandu means pale. And then for some reason, there's a sort of maid, someone who looks after them a little bit, and she thinks, well, she sees what's happening and thinks, well, this sounds, I could get really... So for some reason she comes in, but she's much more like down to earth, so she's not shocked at all. So she comes, she doesn't close her eyes, she isn't afraid, she's just totally loving towards Vedavyas. And she has the most perfect child, called Vidura. So there's 3 children that are born from that. So there's Dhritarashtra, who's blind, the blind king. And he's the one that's at the beginning of the Gita. Dhritarashtra Uvacha says, Dhritarashtra says, what happened? He can't see. So he's his friend who has divine vision. He can see everything, things that are happening a long way away. He says, what's happening on the battlefield. That's how the Gita starts. What's happening when my sons and my brother's sons meet on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? It says what's happened. That's how the Gita starts. Then he starts relating what's happening there, what his sons are doing, what his brother's sons are doing. So, anyway, they decide Pandu is slightly younger, but they decide he'll be the king because he can see. And Dhritarashtra can't see, so it's going to be more difficult for him to be king. So that would have been all okay as well. Pandu could have been king, could have had his children, then the whole story could have ended then. No. We're still just at the beginning. I think, how can we be at the beginning? They've been here 2 hours. It can't be. It must be. Isn't it even the beginning of the end? No, it's just the beginning of the beginning. So Dhritarashtra marries Gandhari. That's his beautiful wife. And she decides, I'm going to share my husband's suffering. So she blindfolds herself. And it's a proper blindfold. Not, she can't even see a little bit. Like, she's says, I'm going to share my husband's situation. Then Pandu marries Queen Kunti. Are you all okay, by the way? It's not too long, is it? Queen Kunti and Madri. He has 2 wives. So he's very, very happy. But Queen Kunti has a dark secret. She has a secret. When she was young, she looked after the sage Durvasa. And he could see through his spiritual vision that in the future she would have trouble conceiving a child. So he gave her a special mantra, the same mantra Vedavyas has. Don't worry, I'm not doing it still. He gives her the mantra. All I can tell you, it begins with Om, has Namaha at the end. Can't tell you the rest of it. But it's very, very powerful. And you find it hard to find, even on Google. You find it difficult to find. It's very advanced. Find it. So he gives her a mantra and says, use this mantra and you can invoke any of the demigods you choose. So you choose any demigod. There's the sun, there's the moon, there's Indra, there's all sorts of god of love, there's all sorts of demigods. Any of those demigods you can choose. And through that mantra, you'll have an illustrious, beautiful child. And she's only about 14 years old, young girl. So she goes back home and she's very, very curious. Very curious. How does this mantra, how's this mantra going to work? And she sees the sun is just coming down like that. And there's beautiful sun rays. So she decides, well, there's no harm, is there? What harm can there be? We'll just try it out. So she says the wonderful mantra, looking at the glorious sun god. So we can't do the mantra now, but we will do Gayatri mantra. Little just, yeah. Okay, is that okay if everyone just do Gayatri mantra?